What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff. I'm your host, Christian Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Gabe Kuhn. Gabe, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing well. We've done 96 of these things, brother.
96.
96? That's kind of, it's mind-blowing. That's a little mind-blowing. But I'm doing well.
We've almost been doing them for 2 years now.
Yeah, I was just watching Monday Night Football, the early game, by the way, Titans, Dolphins. Obviously, Everybody knows we record on Monday, release on Tuesday. And Will Levis stinks.
He's bad.
He threw a pick to Emmanuel Ogbah and then dove for a first down, hurt his shoulder. Now you have Mason Rudolph in the game. Good God, man. This guy, he is bad.
It's almost like he wasn't even good in college. Crazy how that happens.
Might be onto something.
Yeah.
Might be onto something there, brother.
Crazy how that happens, huh? Gabe, are we you want to go quick on weekend recap, or are we going to jump straight into it this week?
Jump straight into it. I'm lagging a little bit. You see me right now on if you're watching video, I'm a little laggy. Sad stuff.
Yep. So we'll jump right into it with Memphis and Middle Tennessee in a as you see in the bottom corner if you're watching SnoozeFest 2024, as Kenny has dubbed it. This was not a pretty game. We talked about it last week as a perfect opportunity for a get-right game for Memphis, for the offense to get back on track, defense to get back on track. What did they close as, Gabe? Like 25.5-point favorites, I believe.
25.5.
Yeah, so big favorites in this game. They only win by 17, 24-7. They don't score until the beginning of the second quarter. It wasn't pretty, and I don't think it really inspired much confidence coming off the heels of the Navy loss.
Right, and I'll say this, they would have been a lot closer if the Middle Tennessee didn't get it forced out of their hand and fumble out of the back of the end zone for a touchback.
Yeah.
There was nothing about this game that just it didn't capture my imagination or my attention, really.
Yeah.
And it's easy if you're a University of Memphis football team, because I am a diehard. It's easy to catch my attention. This game stunk, man. It was not fun. Yeah, I guess you could make the case, workmanlike, they won the game, they handled business, but they didn't handle business in any meaningful way. Right. I guess they ran the ball pretty well. Mario Anderson, 118 yards and a tug. Brandon Thomas, it's really cool to see him start to really show that he's got some staying power, and he's running the ball like he did the first 6 games of his career. He had 6 carries, 48 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But outside of that, Seth Hennigan broke his streak of 41 straight games with a pass touchdown. You still aren't seeing the big shot plays down the field. And then the defense did what they should do against that crappy Middle Tennessee State offense. Secondary, probably not the greatest in the world. Omari Kelly's had 174 yards receiving. So it's just nothing fun or, attention grabbing from this game. It was just a win. The only reason it's good is because you improved to 4-1.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's the only good part about it is they didn't lose the game. That's right. About it. And you kind of hit the only other bright spot, which was Mario Anderson and Brandon Thomas and what they were able to do on the ground. But past that, same thing. No shot plays. You weren't able to get that explosion going on the offense as far as the passing game goes. And it's kind of just rinse and repeat for what we've been talking about for the majority of this year. We're just not seeing the pop from the offense that we're used to seeing. And I feel like every week we keep saying, okay, they're going to play inferior competition moving forward. Schedule gets easier. The AAC is not good, not known for defense by any means. So eventually this offense is going to pick up and start clicking. And even in a plus matchup against Middle Tennessee, they still could not get things going as far as explosion.
I mean, I guess if you want to take another positive sort of thing away from this whole thing is Elijah Herring came back and was a stud, absolute stud, around 8 some odd tackles, 2.5 for loss, 1.5 sacks. What's his name? Chandler Martin had a fumble recovery. So the linebackers played like they should. That linebacking core is really good. But, hey, you're taking a little bye week, then you're going to have a midweek matchup, or you're going to have a matchup against South Florida on a Friday. And South Florida, it's not like they have after last week, they have not inspired a whole bunch of confidence, right? No. Byron Brown, a little bit dinged up, and they lost to Tulane 45-10. So you catch them in a good spot, but that's what you have to look forward to now. You have to go win that game. Then you'll inspire confidence in this fan base, and you'll inspire confidence from the rest of the country, quite frankly, that you can still go win this conference, even though you sort of dug yourself a hole with that Navy game. It's kind of funny, though. The only game where the offense really performed up to the standard that got set last year was in the Navy game. Isn't that a wild reality of the situation? You got beat pretty handily by Navy, but that's the only game where the offense dialed up the deep shots, got the wide receiver, Rock Taylor, Kobe Drake, Demir, all involved, ran the ball decently.
Looked explosive.
Good. But that's the game you lost. That's the game that set you back this year.
Yep. All right. So with that being said, we're not going to spend too much time on that because there's really not much else to say, honestly. So let's switch gears and talk about Memphis Athletic Director Ed Scott. He spoke to the media about the Pac-12, the decision not to go to the Pac-12. And if you were someone who was concerned about this decision or did not like this decision, if you listen to Ed Scott, I think you feel much better about it. And you see and you understand that financially, logistically, all these different reasons that this didn't make sense. I think it was something like Memphis would have been out $22.5 million had they chosen to join the Pac-12. And I think you also have to really like his comments that it's, this is not a decision made overall. Like, no, we're not open to going somewhere else. It's just the Pac-12, and the opportunity to go to the Pac-12 was not enticing enough for us to leave the American. So I know there was at least a little bit of concern about that. You have people saying, well, if we're not going to leave now, are we ever going to leave? Is Ed Scott just stuck on staying in the American, which I think was a pretty crazy take, but it definitely was out there. And he cleared that up and said, if an opportunity that makes sense is available and on the table, then it is certainly a possibility and something that could happen. And I think at the end of the day, that's all you really want to hear.
Yeah. I could have told you it didn't make financial sense. I guess you had to hear it from the horse's mouth, though. You had to hear it from Ed Scott. If you were one of those people that said they 100% made the wrong decision, then you got to hear it from the horse's mouth. You may still not believe him, but it's the truth of the matter. It always cracked me up. Like before he spoke, there was a lot of people who thought it was the wrong decision who would, look at the competition. There's all these teams in the top 60 of Massey ratings. There's all these teams in the top 80 of Bart Torvik on the basketball side. Of course, it's a way better competitive conference. And I have always said, if it was just about competition, you go. But that's not what it's about. Those same people, though, whenever you bring up the financial part of it, their answer is, oh, well, I don't know where the money's going to come from, but everybody else seems to figure out a way to do these things. And it's like, well, that's not an answer. That's not a real answer. Right. You could try to project everyone else on the University of Memphis, but we've learned in the past the University of Memphis has a tougher financial situation than most of the country. It's better than the Group of Five, but it's not as good as the Power Four and the power structure of college athletics. So he basically said what I was thinking and what I was trying to tell people all week. I did like sort of the idea of the messaging behind it being it was a bad deal, and we as Memphis fans and Memphis people that support the University of Memphis need to have more respect for ourselves. That's kind of the idea of his entire message, and I agree with him, man. I think the move to stay in the AAC stinks. Doesn't give anybody a whole bunch of confidence with where the University of Memphis can head in the future to like a power conference or whatever. But I think it was the right decision for now. He also kind of kept the door open. If you listen closely, I kept the door open for the Pac-12, basically saying, hey guys, you want to figure this out? Come to us with a better offer. Don't be disrespectful.
Yeah. I just want to pull a couple quotes from what he had to say real quick. Cause we've both been on board with Ed Scott since the beginning. First time we heard him speak, we're like, man, this guy make you want to run through a wall. And I think he had some really good points that continued to kind of soothe that the notion that this was a bad decision. And he went on and said, while I'm the athletic director at the University of Memphis, I'm not going to make decisions out of scarcity or desperation. I just don't think that's fair to the city. I don't think it's fair to our student athletes, and it's not fair to the university. I just think that's a short-sighted approach to leadership, and that's not one that we take. So just a lot of stuff in here. If you go through, listen to it again, and really pay attention to some of those quotes, he's saying all the right things because I genuinely believe he made the right decision in this circumstance. And I know just like me, most people on face value were like, oh my gosh, what is going on? But the depth of what he had to say, I think fully let you know that if it would have even remotely made sense for Memphis to do it financially, because I know he referenced geography a lot. And, if we're the only team going, then we already have one hand tied behind our back, which I don't think is false. I think that's relatively true, and it's tough to do that. But I think if financially this made any sense, I still think Memphis would have done this. So I know geography obviously plays a role, and it would be a little bit more difficult if every single team in the conference is on the West Coast and you're smack dab in the middle of the Mid-South. But still, I think he said all the right things, and everything that he said made sense. And he just continues to be impressive when you put a microphone in front of his face.
Yeah, and what's most impressive is he didn't have to do anything like that. Like, I suggested it. That was something like all last week, everybody was suggesting, now that you've made this decision, at least explain it to the people of Memphis so you can soften the blow of staying in the American where no one wants to stay. But I still applaud him because, like, I look at Laird Veach, his predecessor. I don't know if Laird is that forthright about the situation. And I don't know if Laird would be able to explain it the exact same way with the charisma and the hope that Ed explained it with. So I applaud him for seeing that there were fans that were frustrated and trying to alleviate some of that frustration.
Yeah.
That's what I applaud him for, because that's there are not a lot of athletic directors around the country who have the ability to get in front of a mic like that in a very tough situation at a tough time and just tell it how it is. And he spoke truth. I mean, he got up there, said what he needed to say, made it clear his intentions going forward, ACC or Big 12. Hey, if they come calling, we're still going to go. But I love him. I really do. I love Ed Scott. He is so damn impressive. And like to hear even Ryan after the Middle Tennessee game, he was asked about the relationship he has with Ed Scott. And he goes, I think we're very like-minded. Another thing Ed said is that he thought the coaches weren't really on board with most of the coaches at the University of Memphis were not on board with joining the Pac-12. Yeah. And for them, it's more about geography and travel and
competitive disadvantage.
Competitive disadvantage because of the geography and the travel. But, if that whole athletic department is moving in the right direction, if they're all in agreement, I think that's what you should ask for. You need to have everybody in lockstep, and it sounds like they did have everybody in lockstep.
Yeah, absolutely. So last thing, University of Memphis related before we move on to the hot three. Memphis's AAC conference schedule released on the basketball side of things. Gabe?
Poo-poo, poo-poo, poo-poo. Disgusting.
You don't love it?
Oh, my God, brother. Thank you, Penny Hardaway, for scheduling as tough out of conference as you possibly can. Yep. Thank God for a Mizzou home game. Thank God for Mississippi State and Ole Miss at home, because good Lord, name one game on this schedule in conference that people are going to show up for. Yep. Please. And I know if they're good enough and they're, top 25, Memphis finds a way to rally around a team, whether they're playing Tulsa or Temple or Wichita State or Florida Atlantic. It doesn't usually matter. But there's just no games on this damn schedule that do anything for me. Yeah. And I was looking at Bart Torvik. There are 3 teams in the top 100 from the AAC, man. In the top 100. And I think Wichita State is 100. North Texas is in there. I thought UAB would be in there, but I didn't see them in the top 100. Maybe I missed something. But I'd say the 2 games you're looking at attending, quite frankly, and I'll add a bonus, I guess, kind of 2.5. North Texas, first home game in conference. UAB, which will be on January 26th. It's the 4th home game on this schedule. And then if you still hold a little bit of hate in your heart, which I know there's some fans that still hold a little bit of hate in their heart for Florida Atlantic, you can maybe show up on February 23rd and, try to root on the Tigers to a win to beat them. But they have John Jacobs. There's no longer Dusty May. Not the same set of circumstances. Different players altogether. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's poo-poo. It's what it is. But that's just the hand you're dealt with staying in the AAC. I did hate the timing of it, though, because our last conversation about Ed Scott and not going to the Pac-12 and this conversation do relate to each other in a certain way, because people are so mad that you're not going to play San Diego State and Boise State and Oregon State and Washington State. Then a couple days later, they're like, oh, this shit, man. Yeah. Like, it was just bad timing for a schedule release, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, everything that you said, retweet all of that, because you started off talking about the non-con schedule, and if it's not what it is, then there's no excitement about any University of Memphis basketball games, just truthfully, because no one inside this conference brings any kind of name value. You might have sneaky good teams that metrics love and all that, but it's not. There's no name value, and we know that. We knew that when all the additions to the conference were announced. So I'm not doing anything but reiterating old news. But yeah, if you don't have a strong non-conference schedule, then this is a total, as we talked about earlier, SnoozeFest. But fortunately, Penny is very good and become even better at scheduling these non-conference games. And that makes the absolutely awful conference schedule that Memphis fans have to sit through every year at least a little bit more palatable. But you're right. You said what makes you show up for games. The only thing that makes people show up for home games this year is if Memphis is good. That's it. That's the only thing, because there's no, the excitement of playing another name brand or top 25 or bitter rival opponent at home. It gets fans fired up. There's none of that in the conference, and sad, but it is what it is. And maybe one day there will be greener pastures, and we'll continue to sit on our hands and wait.
What is funny to me, though, like looking at the schedule, it is kind of wild to see how many revenge games there are for the current Tiger roster. Colby Rogers has 2 chances against Wichita State on January 23rd, and then February 16th, it'll be out there. So he'll probably get a couple of boo birds. PJ Carter is going to have to go on the road against UTSA on March 4th. Then you have PJ Haggerty. He's going to have to, deal with Tulsa. Obviously, that one will be at home, I believe. I don't think they don't have an away game against Tulsa. But it is like this is the AAC Avengers and a bad really AAC. Is. You've taken every redeeming quality from most of the teams in conference and put them on one team to be the AAC champion Memphis Tigers. And I'll say this about Penny and this team, buddy, win. Don't lose any of these shitty games anymore.
No.
Don't do it. And honestly, that goes with like not making the move to the Pac-12 as well. You can't lose to the Rices anymore.
No.
You can't, if you want to prove that you're better, that you can aspire for more than what the Pac-12 is offering you, you have to show that on a field of play, on a court. So I want to see no bad losses. I know road basketball can get wonky, but these teams are all, I don't know, bottom half out of the teams in the country, all the teams in the country. Like, you just have no excuse. You don't.
Nope, not at all. But luckily for the people tuned into this, we have something a little bit more exciting coming up than the AAC schedule for the University of Memphis basketball team, and that's the Hot 3. So we are going to take a quick break, and on the other side, Kenny's going to hit us with the much more anticipated, much more exciting Hot 3.
I believe Derrick Rose, if you say, if he's still on the roster game 1 in Utah, who's going to be the guy tapping Ja's hand as Ja Morant comes out of the game? It's going to be Derrick Rose. I wholeheartedly believe that to be the case. It's kind of obvious, for one, because you lose a backup point guard And you technically, like, you don't have a traditional backup point guard on your 15-man roster right now. You got Marcus Smart, who's your starting wing. You got Desmond Bane, who's a starting wing, who are capable of playing those positions. And you got Scottie Pippen Jr. on a two-way deal, 2 open roster spots to go out and explore, potential backup bigs, potential backup point guards. I don't think they're going to address those roster spots with like a wing. Derrick Rose, like he's pretty much, hey, I want to be bought out the contract. They didn't expect that. So with that being the case, the Grizzlies have to kind of pivot on their feet as well.
Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show, Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
I'm a big Derrick Rose fan. I'm glad we were around Derrick Rose for a year. He's an interesting dude, and I think a guy who brings a lot of knowledge to the game and a lot of knowledge to other guys on the team and things like that. And I liked being around him, and any chance I got to speak with him, he was always a real engaging guy and super cool. So I'm a big Derrick Rose fan.
Listen, he was great for this team when he was on the floor. He was great off of the floor. I thought we got to see Derrick Rose. For me, it was mature from the first time he came into the league, just growing into himself in terms of the level of comfort to be able to express himself to other people on the team, to let them know what was going through his mind, how he thought things could be better. And so I thought it was good for our guys to be able to experience that from him, because he will always be the legend Derrick Rose.
Tune in to the Night Court Podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. What up,
There he is.
boys?
Oh, gosh.
I'm
We have our
back.
music bed ready to go.
Listen, I'm back. Last week was rough. I apologize for last week.
A little choppy.
A little choppy, even Gabe. I come on the show and Gabe's lagging stops. Like,
Dude,
it's
at the
incredible.
breaks today, I have been perfect. And then as soon as I get back on the show, I've been laggy. But if you're listening to the audio version, none of this matters to you. If
None
you're
of this
watching
matters
this
to you.
video on YouTube, yeah, you see it.
Before we get into the hot three, I just wanted to say, kind of as a, for some reason, this one hit me a little bit hard today. Rest in peace to Dikembe Mutombo. Just passed away at 58 years old of brain cancer. I want it to be said about me, boys, that like, you take your talent. He was a talented basketball player, right? But he took his gifts and he took his talents and he basically took it back to the beautiful continent of Africa and said, I'm going to give as many opportunities and I'm going to take all of my resources and just spread it to my people in Africa. And I just, like, if you think about Dikembe Mutombo, you think about a couple of things. You think about the finger wag, the no, that kind of stuff. But then you also think about what he did post-career and just his humanitarian efforts. And so for some reason, this one just really hit me hard today. And I just want to say rest in peace to Dikembe and his
Rest in
family.
peace there. And also, I
Pete
got to
Rose.
say, rest in peace to Charlie Hustle, dude. Pete Rose just passed away. 83 years.
Really?
of age.
Yeah.
I think the question there now becomes, and I've always
Yes.
hated this is the case with the MLB Hall of Fame.
They're gonna do it now.
Steroid guys too. They're going to put him in the Hall of Fame now. But why?
They should
Why
have
don't-
when he was alive. What are you
I
talking
know.
about?
I know, like the betting stuff. I think most people are over it, but especially because he was a manager at the time too. It's just during his playing career, he didn't have anything like that going on, or maybe he did and we didn't know about it. But he was unbelievable, all-time leader in hits, and it kind of bothers me that we have to let the guys who we call into question their, upholding the sanctity of the game, or like, people that have, issues away from the baseball field. The fact that we have to wait for them to die to put them in,
A little bit crazy.
That's just sad. That's a sad reality of where the Baseball Hall of Fame is, because there's just too many old ass writers voting on this still that can't let bygones be bygones.
There's a weird dynamic in baseball, and we'll get past this real quick, but there's a weird dynamic in baseball, and Christian knows this well because he covers and follows baseball so well. But just there's this weird dynamic in baseball that there's just this good old boys like the letter, the intent, the sacredness of the game, and it's like, guys,
what about
relax.
the unwritten rules?
The unwritten rules.
Yeah, throw it at his head.
Ugh.
If you throw inside on us, we're gonna throw it at your brain, at your noggin.
It's crazy. I'm like, guys,
tight, baby.
relax. Okay. All right, let's get to the hot three. Kind of our normal standard hot three during the football seasons, but let's go NFL Week 4 recap. What game stood out to y'all, boys?
Start us up.
Okay. To me, I know where this conversation is going and what it's going to be centered around, and I think it's very, very good the direction that we're about to talk about. And those teams both had impressive victories, so I'll save that for just a second. But to me, I want to start with the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels.
Man.
80+% completion percentage through 4 games. He broke Tom Brady's record. I think he's 82.1% completion percentage, which the first 2 games you could have said, okay, it's a lot of dink and dunk, a lot of short to intermediate game. But these last 2 weeks, Cliff Kingsbury's really opened it up for him, allowed him to use his arm and legs, obviously. But 82.1% completion percentage, what he's able to do with really a limited weaponry in Washington, it's basically Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson is what he has as weaponry, and a 30-whatever-year-old Zach Ertz, who probably runs like a 5.6 right now. But he's just been incredible. He's been a lot of fun to watch. And I know a lot of people, when you talk about mobile
5.6 is fast.
5.6 is come on, brother. I'd be begging for a 5.6. You put me on the line, but no,
I'd take my clothes off if I ran out.
Disrespectful. 5.6 is nuts for Zach Ertz, dude. But hey, why not?
But just last thing on Jaden Daniels, real quick. I think typically when we talk about mobile quarterbacks, especially nowadays, you're immediately compared to like Cam Newton, Mike Vick, and Lamar Jackson. And that's kind of where it goes. But I think in the same vein as Josh Allen, who's kind of broken that mold and become a different type of mobile quarterback, it looks to me like Jaden Daniels has the same kind of repertoire. Lamar is a little bit more limited in what he can do passing. I think Jaden Daniels, I really do. I think the sky's the limit for Jaden Daniels. I think he has a better arm than he does legs, which just typically isn't the case. So he's been really impressive 4 games in. So it's exciting to see where his career could go. And they beat the crap out of the Cardinals by 28 points.
Well, here's my thing. I love Jaden Daniels, but tell me who his offensive coordinator is. Go ahead.
Cliff Kingsbury.
What do we know to be true about Cliff Kingsbury? He can get it going early in the season. Yeah. There's multiple times at Texas Tech where he'd get to 4-0 and they'd be ranked and they'd finish 7-5. They'd finish 5-7. They'd barely ever get to 8 wins. You know what I mean? Like, so I've seen what he does in the early season. Look at what he did with the Cardinals. I mean, they were 10-0, 11-2 at one point. Yeah. And then they just lost everything down the stretch of the season, got knocked out early in the playoffs. So I love what I'm seeing from Jaden Daniels, but I want to keep watching this closely as time passes, as time marches on, because we have seen in the past Cliff Kingsbury offenses work for a young quarterback who has the skill set of Jaden Daniels. And then as you get more film and they start to get the book on you, it slows down dramatically because he's a little bit gimmicky. He's very predictable, like incredibly predictable.
Yeah.
You know, he runs a certain set. If he runs a trips to the right, you know, away from the hash to the field, basically, you know exactly what type of route combination's coming at you. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. He looks really good and the talent is apparent, but I want to see how it looks over the long haul with Cliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator. But he does the things that, even if he doesn't have Cliff, give me hope for his future. The throw he made to Terry McLaurin last week, unbelievable. Getting hit right in the mouth, right over the shoulder. I think there was something like a 2.7% chance, according to Next Gen Stats, of that being completed, and he completed it for a touchdown. He's got good legs. I wish he'd slide a little bit more, but it looks like he's starting to add that to the repertoire. Apparently, he likes diving head first, which not a good thing in the NFL. Don't dive head first. Just never works out for anybody. But I agree with you there. Now, I have another takeaway from week 4, and really it has to do with the Ravens getting back on the winning edge. I think they found their golden ticket. I think they found what we knew to be the truth from the beginning of the season. They found, hey, let's hand the ball off to Derrick Henry 800 times a game. Take the pressure off Lamar. Don't let Lamar take any unnecessary hits. And we can pace the game well. We can probably score some long touchdown runs. First play of the freaking game, they run a stretch play to Derrick Henry for 87 yards or whatever the hell it was. So the Ravens, I think, are sitting at 2-2, just knocked off the team that I thought was playing the best football through 3 weeks, and the Buffalo Bills. They beat them 35-10. I think that the Ravens are going to start, setting the entire NFL on fire. I think they're going to start playing really well and maybe be one of the best teams in the AFC. And also, Chiefs won't lose. They don't look overly good. Like, I think Patrick Mahomes has made some nasty mistakes with the football through at least the last couple of weeks, but they're resilient, and when it gets to the fourth quarter, they're going to make the play they need to make.
100%.
Winners win, man. Winners win.
Now, let's get to this conversation.
Yeah, I have a conversation. I have a question, and this is something that, I'd love to get y'all's input on. But there's been this kind of resurgence of quarterbacks that were high picks in their draft class that maybe flamed out. I don't know if flamed out is the right phrase that we
flamed
use.
Out at the previous stop.
Flamed out in their first stop, maybe even with some of these guys, their second, third stop, but are having resurgent years this year. And the 3 guys that I'm thinking of in particular, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, right? And you look at the stats from this year alone in terms of they are top 10 in everything. In touchdowns, Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield are top 1 and 2 in the NFL in touchdown passes this year.
It's hilarious.
I mean, can I add a name to this that I want to keep watching?
Justin Fields.
Because this week he threw for 312. Didn't have a pick either.
Crazy, right?
Against a Colts defense, it's pretty solid. Not bad.
So if the question I have for you guys is, what do we make of this? Did we give up on these guys too quickly? Or how important are systems for quarterbacks in regards to their success?
They're the most important. I think I'm going to sort of shift. I need to shift everyone's thinking on quarterback prospects, because we'll probably talk about it here when we get to our college football portion of the Hot 3. I like Shedeur Sanders a lot. He's my favorite quarterback prospect next year. But depending on where he gets picked, I may have to rethink any bit of skill set he has.
100%.
I think the most important thing when evaluating a quarterback is where's he actually going to end up.
Yeah.
That's what I think, Kenny. Baker Mayfield had a couple of okay years with the Browns, but that system didn't work out for him.
Right.
Sam Darnold to the Jets and Adam Gase and all that dysfunction. Hell no. And then he was with the Panthers with Matt Rule. More dysfunction. Geno Smith, I think it's a little different for him because he had a couple of decent years before he got to the Seahawks, but he flamed out.
Right.
I just think the most important, truly the most important thing when evaluating a quarterback is where's he actually going to play football in the National Football League.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that this should start a conversation in NFL front offices and things like that, because why are we taking somebody if we can't, tailor make a system towards them, or if they don't fit the system we're already in? And I'll give an example on that of what's already happened to show that it's shifting that way. It's the person that we just talked about in Jaden Daniels. What did Washington do? They went out and got the coordinator that could perfectly craft a system to Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
Exactly what they did. Instead of instead of trying to fit a square peg.
Instead of bringing in Caleb Williams and making his OC Shane fucking Waldron, you know what I mean? Who couldn't even get Geno up and going.
Exactly. So, and that's my point, is there's nothing more important to a quarterback than a system. A quarterback can be ultra talented, but if you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, 99% of the time it's not going to work when it comes to these quarterbacks. If they're doing things that they aren't comfortable with doing or don't excel in doing, and instead of saying, okay, how can we mold the system to this quarterback? How can we be friendly to this quarterback? These are his tendencies. This is what he struggles at. It's like, no, we're drafting you. This is our offense. This is what you're going to do. And that's stupid. And it's luckily for Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, they were able to come out on the other side and eventually find that home. How many talented quarterbacks in this league have been wasted and never been able to reach their potential because of this? I can't imagine what that number is.
Give me a couple of names that are floating through your brain right now of guys that have flamed out that you're like, these guys were uber talented, but just in the wrong system.
Off the top of the head. Gabe, you have any names?
I want to give one off the top of the brain that never even was given an opportunity because of exactly what Christian was talking about. But Josh Rosen was a talented player, but he went to a place that like never even gave him the time of day. Like they had a 1-year holdover coach that didn't tailor anything toward him on the offensive side of the ball. He gets fired. They're like, screw it. We're going to completely change this thing over. And then I will give the Cardinals credit. They did tailor it to Kyler Murray. Yeah. They did take Kyler Murray and bring in Kingsbury. And then look at the success that followed. Yeah. So like there's a bunch of examples. But I Josh Rosen is always the one that comes to mind because we didn't even take it. He got picked, 7th overall, something like that. Yeah. We, at the time, were even like, how's this going to work out? Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense what they're trying to do because they have this holdover coach that's never going to last.
Those are all three the same draft class, too, right? Baker, Sam, and Rosen?
I think so, yeah.
I think they're all the same year, 2018.
I think so. But all right. It's just, I'm telling you, the most important thing for me for now on, instead of just talking about skill set and how this guy can turn around a franchise, let's talk about how the franchise is going to help that guy. Let's talk about it if the franchise has the capability of putting their best foot forward with a new quarterback, not just making the quarterback have all the pressure of the franchise on their shoulders when they're not going to do anything for him. They're just going to make him fit to a scheme. I've talked about good versus great coaches. What's the difference? Good coaches, they have a system that they like. They make you mold to their system. Great coaches, they take the personnel they have, who you are as a quarterback, and say, we're going to tailor the system to fit your needs. And, you see the difference every Sunday. It couldn't be more painfully obvious. It is so obvious when you see it.
All right, last question on this topic, and we'll go just fly through this real fast because we need to get moving. But it feels like to me that there are professional levels and even college levels. You can look at coaches and say coaching is important, but it feels like in the NFL, coaching is more important than any professional league that's out there. That coaching is like having a good coach with a good system is more important in the NFL than it is in any other professional league. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, there's 11 guys on offense. There's 11 guys on defense. There's 11 guys on every special team. It's a team game. It's a team sport. If you don't have a good leader that pulls the ball in the right direction, you're not going to be good. Because one person not doing their job costs you the job, costs the play.
Yep.
You give up a 60-yard touchdown. You get sacked in the backfield. One person not doing their job costs everything. I think in like the NBA or like Major League Baseball, you can have whatever manager, whatever coach. Yeah, some like there are great coaches. Like for the NBA, for example,
right?
You know, if you have Eric Spoelstra versus having JJ Redick, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
But still, I think the talent from an individual standpoint can carry the day, even if you're not that good of a coach.
Same thing with college.
Talent on its own can't carry the day because there's 10 other guys. If you have the most talented quarterback in the
everybody is good, right? Like
if you
everybody.
have the most talented quarterback in the National Football League and your O-line sucks, you're going to have a horrible offense. If you have a great offensive line and your quarterback is 32 out of 32, you're going to have a bad offense. So I just think the reason that is the case, why it's so important, is because it is the ultimate team sport. I know how cliche that is, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's true.
Yep.
All right. Second topic, college football week 5. Tennessee still a national title contender, guys? Is Tennessee still a national title contender?
Well, they didn't play this week.
Well, that is, they're still, so they still are then, right?
I think they're, I mean, Ole Miss is out of the picture for now.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk college football,
We got to talk Alabama, Georgia, right?
this week
Like,
starts Alabama, Georgia.
Jesus Christ, what a game.
So I watched the first half of this game, and it was a blowout. And so I turned it off, and I was kind of just occasionally checking my phone every 10 minutes or so. And I checked it. At one point, it was 33-10, and I was like, okay, it's over. Checked it again like maybe 7 or 8 minutes later. It was 33-28, and I was like, oh my gosh, scramble, turn it on. First play I turn it on, Dylan Bell, 68-yard touchdown. Georgia doesn't get the 2-point conversion. I was like, oh my gosh, Georgia's going to pull this out. Next play, Jalen Milroe to Ryan Williams, 75-yard touchdown.
17-year-old kid, dude.
He's
That
awesome.
God.
He's
I mean,
awesome.
honestly, no one blows me away. Even if he plays out his college career and leaves when he's available to after 3 years, he'll still only be 19
Yeah.
by the time he gets drafted in the NFL draft. And that play in that situation by a 17-year-old,
Nuts.
it's just ridiculous, man. He makes a ridiculous play on the ball in one-on-one coverage with a safety coming over top. So he started there. Second, he spins up out of there, uses his feet, makes the Georgia defensive backs collide with each other. Then he takes off 75 yards down the sideline. So
Shot
we're
out of
3
a
for
cannon.
3 at this point. And then he takes out his mouthpiece while they're chasing him and still makes it to the end zone. I'm like, this guy, that's a gamer if I've ever seen it, man.
He's
And it's
awesome.
kind of funny to me because he was so young. There's 2 wide receivers that I think were ahead of him in this year's recruiting cycle from the high school level. You had Cam Coleman and Jeremiah Smith. Everybody was Cam Coleman at Auburn, Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. And by the way, he had 2 one-handed catches.
Jeremiah Smith
The
was
same drive and that one-handed catch in the end zone was nasty.
Nasty.
But
nasty.
everybody wanted to give them all the credit. They're like, Ryan Williams, we're gonna have to wait and see. Ryan Williams might be the best of the bunch, and that's saying something because I think Jeremiah Smith is certifiably unguardable. I don't think you can guard the guy, but I don't think Ryan Williams is guardable either. You just saw him do that for a whole game, and then in crunch time against Georgia's secondary. You got to let that a Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann coached defense and secondary. He cooked them the whole night. 6 catches, 177 yards, and a 75-yard touchdown to go ahead with 2 minutes left after you basically had your heart ripped out for a moment because you didn't think Georgia was ever going to come back in that game. The momentum shifted all that far, and Ryan Williams didn't give a damn about momentum. But from that game, can I make my big statement about Alabama?
Go for it.
From a front 7 perspective, I don't know of a team better. Front 7.
Good.
I don't know of a team better. Deontay Lawson, number 32, their linebacker, absolute bowler. He'll be an NFL guy. Jaheim Otis, Tim Keenan, those guys in the middle, really good. Quay Russaw, one of their edge rushers, really good. I'm forgetting the other guy, but he's got LT Overton, their other defensive end, absolute. I don't see a front 7 as good as them in college football. They held Georgia 26 rushes for 80 yards.
Yeah.
I know that the back end got taken advantage of mostly in the second half,
They're young back there.
but at the same time, that front 7 was not having anything all night. You weren't going to get anything off them.
Yeah, and I'll give mine from that. And I was saying it during the game and been saying it since. And I know you just talked about Shedeur Sanders, Gabe, but I think Jalen Milroe is the best quarterback in college football.
Sure.
And I genuinely don't think it's that close. The thing about him is, okay, last year we know he was benched, South Florida game, whatever, and he turned it on at the end of the season. He's gotten even better since then. And I don't know if you remember this. I'm sure you do, Gabe. But if people listen, I don't know if you remember this, but the end of last year, he stormed into the Heisman conversation. Coming from being benched early in the season against South Florida to he was right up there in the Heisman conversation. And he's even better this year. And the thing about him, we've talked a lot about quarterbacks and schemes and all this. At the collegiate level, if you have a quarterback that is that athletic, you can win any game. And he's the fastest player on the field. He's the most elusive player on the field. Maybe if Ryan Williams.
And he'll truck, if he wanted to, he will truck anybody in your secondary. He'll truck a linebacker. He's huge.
Yeah, and his deep ball's always been good, but now we're starting to see the short and intermediate passing game catch up. We're seeing the game slow down for him, and when he takes off, like I said, he's so elusive. He's so fast. He's so big. Like he's a special player.
I think there's 3 guys in college football that have this ability. I think Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe all have this ability. They're unflappable. And what I mean by that, you can make a bad play, they forget about it. It's like it never happened. They could throw the nastiest pick in the world. Hell, Cam Ward did it on Friday night. But you know what he follows it up with? One of the most miraculous plays you'll ever see for to set his team up in the inside the 5 for a touchdown to go win the game. Jalen Milroe, I know we gave Ryan Williams a lot of credit for the 75-yard touchdown. Jalen Milroe, the damn balls on this guy to throw that up in a one-on-one to his wide receiver. Just give him a jump ball down the sideline. In that situation, early in the it was an early down. Was it first down or second down or whatever it was?
First down.
Yeah, the balls you have to throw that up in that situation, because that very well, if that is a elite corner out there, he's turning around, picking it off, taking it the other way, ending the game.
Yeah.
But he still just trusted his talent. He trusted the talent he had on the outside, and they made it happen. So I agree with you, best college football quarterback. Now have this conversation with me. Let's talk about pros. We're talking about 2025 NFL draft. Carson Beck, to me, step back. Nope, can't do it. Because up to this point, he's been a really good game manager. And he can make the throws when he needs to. And he did that in the second half, honestly. He did really well in the second half. But the mistakes he made on the 3 picks, sorry. Like, if you're going to be the type of quarterback he is, a little more statuesque in the pocket, going to be a pocket passer, I can't see you make those mistakes.
Yeah.
I can't see that. And I will say this. I think when I say Jalen Milroe is unflappable, I think that guy's flappable, if that's sort of the way you'd put it. I think he can get affected by a rush in his face, and when he makes one mistake, it could lead to another.
Yeah, I mean, if I was an NFL GM, I wouldn't have him in the top 3. My 3 would be Shedeur, Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe. And not in that order, just it would be those 3. Because Carson Beck, like you said, he's been solid. He's managed games, but he doesn't really do anything spectacular. He doesn't have like this world beater of an arm.
He can do it, but it's not as consistent as the other guys.
Right. So I'm with you. I don't think he really does anything special. He doesn't really do anything for me. He's really just Stetson Bennett with a little bit more of a live arm, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he's bigger and makes a little bit. Shedeur, though, that's my guy. I'm sorry. I know he holds on the ball too long, and I just wish people could. It's such a frustrating thing because I know that like that program, Colorado, by the way, beat UCF on the road 48-21. Defense looks good. Offense looks good. Travis Hunter should be the front runner for Heisman right now. He'll be up there with Jalen Milroe and Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, because Ashton Jeanty has 82 carries for 845 yards and 13 touchdowns in 4 games. But
Ashton Jeanty's thing I mean, come on, man.
Shedeur, to me, I wish people could just drop the negativity and the vitriol, the hate that they have for that Colorado program. Because if you drop that and you watch Shedeur play football, it really is fun to watch. He spreads the ball around. Yeah, he's got Travis Hunter out there, but that's not the only guy that catches passes. People lose sight of that. And his ability to sort of move around the pocket, make plays on and off script, the accuracy downfield, the zip he has on his intermediate routes. I wish people could just drop like the hate they have for the guy and that program and truly watch Shedeur. Because I put that out on my social media this week. I put it out on X. I said, after watching Carson Beck in that game, Shedeur is my QB1 for the 2025 NFL draft. And all the responses you get are, just stop it. And I'm like, you're only saying that because you have this built-in bias against the guy and that program in prime. If you were being objective about what you're watching with the quarterbacks going into next year's draft, I think you come away with a very similar thought process as me, where Shedor's at the top.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I would take Jalen Milroe.
That's fine, and I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me too.
Yeah, it would probably be Jalen, and then
the only thing I have with Shedeur over Jalen is Jalen's a really good thrower of the football. Don't get me wrong. I just think he's not as natural of a thrower as Shedeur is, and I know that's a pretty arbitrary type of statement to make, but that's just sort of how I feel.
All right, Gabe, you were at Grizzlies Media Day all day today. Give me in like 2-minute wrap up your Media Day reactions. What did you see today? What were some big takeaways from today?
All right, can I start with Ja Morant? That looks like an energized fella. I had an interview with him that I played today on my show, and I just came away saying this is a guy who will go probably the rest of his career, probably have no incidents, just because I think he has completely changed his way of thinking. I think there's a lot of guys that come into the league that get as famous and get that celebrity as fast as he did, coming from Murray State, unheralded guy, and they don't know how to handle it. And they live day by day. They fly by the seat of their pants. They don't prioritize their mental health. When I brought up like how he feels and his mentality and what shifted to make him happier with himself on a day-to-day basis, he was like, well, listen, tomorrow I may feel shitty. Tomorrow I may struggle with the things that I struggled with before, but it's a day-to-day battle for me now. It's something that I prioritize. It's something,
and he's aware of.
If I notice myself thinking a certain way or acting a certain way, I can check myself in that moment.
You know what I noticed? I noticed on a live last night. He did a live super late last night. He was out working out. And he gets on there and he's
this type of live. It ain't that type of live.
He said it's alive, but it ain't that type of live. I was like, my guy is back, because like when you're able to be self-deprecating about a situation and like be aware and be like to me, that tells me he's comfortable in his skin, bro. And that is all you can ask for, is just someone who is aware and is comfortable in their skin. And he has everything he's doing right now comes across that way.
And here's the real thing with the Grizzlies. I know they had a bunch of injuries last year, but did you notice just generally a lack of swagger, a lack of want to? Ja like immediately injects that into a team. You see them just talking with each other. You just see them having more fun. I saw them today messing around with each other, enjoying life, and it's been a while since they've been able to do that. You know what I mean? Last year was just such a disappointing year from an injury standpoint and everything else that you couldn't really celebrate. But I think these guys are back to where they were a couple of years ago. But Ja, I think, has changed his mindset to where they're not going to get derailed by anything he does, which is awesome.
And not only, and we'll wrap it up with this, but not only with that, not only are they back to where they were 2 years ago, they're 2 years older. And that is a monster, dude. Monster.
By the way, can everybody calm down on like Marcus Smart stuff? I talked to him today.
Chill.
I talked to him today.
He's here.
And everybody's like questioning if he wants to be here. Oh, he wasn't. He skipped exit interviews, and he wasn't with his teammates all off season. He wasn't working out with them. I talked to him today.
He had a kid this off season.
Yeah, and by the way, he had his wedding anniversary out in Turks and Caicos. Learned that today. You know what I mean? So like, I talked to the guy, and he was engaged. He seemed happy. There was not a worry at all. There was not a worry at all, like just watching him visibly, about him not wanting to be there. And I think people need to realize he's going to be important, because I think he can do a lot of the things, at least in the interim, while Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. are out. You're going to need the best of Marcus Smart to start the year with those two injuries.
Yep, I totally agree.
All right, boys. We appreciate you guys for joining us this week. If you are watching on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, and comment there. If you're listening, whether that's on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, you can do the same things there. You can also go to bluffcitymedia.co, check out all the articles, podcasts, and videos on the site. Once again, we thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.